Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Rangers Review morning briefing for Monday, the 21st of November. It's a big day as far as Rangers Football Club are concerned, folks. If you're just tuning in, the breaking news is that Giovanni van Bronckhorst is no longer the Rangers manager. He has been dismissed from his role as boss after just over a year in charge. We believe that Rain has been cut short after the Ibrox board made a decision to part ways with Van Bronckhorst halfway through his first full term in charge. It did look like he would have a stay of execution as the first week of the World Cup break passed without any announcement. And he did celebrate that 1 year in charge last Friday. However, it's our understanding that he's now been dismissed from his job at Rangers. I'm joined by Joshua Barry and Stevie Clifford to discuss this breaking news. First of all, Stevie, can I get your reaction to the news that's unfolding?
Shock. I think that's probably, it's came out of nowhere. I thought that perhaps, given the length of time that we've seen from a week past, that maybe he was going to survive and Rangers would try and see it out at least until the AGM. But this has kind of developed within the last half an hour. Important to state at the moment that it's unconfirmed from the club, but it has been run by many outlets. So we're taking it as being where we are. I would only imagine that the club have spent time trying to get their ducks in a row, Derek, in terms of who's going to come in. And if they have done that, then I appreciate why they've taken their time to do it. We can't afford another situation where we're fumbling 2, 3, 4 weeks down the line and we don't have anybody in. So if this is a moment where they've got somebody ready and waiting to come in, then I understand it completely. With regards to the whole decision and overall, people will know my thoughts on Van Bronckhorst and the football that's been played. I think he's a lovely guy. We've all dealt with him, and he deals with us all very well. But I would be remiss not to say that I think it's the best decision for the club at the moment. And in terms of where we're going and where we need to be, I think that change was required.
Yes. Joshua, it's big news this morning. I think it's fair to say it caught us all by surprise. Me and Stevie caught wind early on that there could be something afoot. It's now looks like it has been confirmed. A number of outlets confirming a parting of the ways. Your initial reaction, is it one of surprise for you?
Yeah, I agree with Stevie. Obviously, unconfirmed by the club, but from what we've heard and from what everyone else is kind of running with, it looks very much like the decision has been made. Wasn't what I was expecting today, Derek, this Monday morning. And I think most people would have expected the club, if they were going to make a decision, to have made that decision last week. Obviously, as Stevie alludes to, perhaps that's because it's looking towards the future. It's trying to speak to potential candidates. But I very much thought that either it would be done at the very start or it would be done maybe in a couple of weeks. So surprised that it's been done today. But I think, casting my mind back to that game at St Mirren, Derek, when you saw Van Bronckhorst arguing with Tavernier, you had all the reports of certain issues with certain players. It very much did feel like a falling apart just on the eye test, and I think anyone who was there that day will have agreed with that. And I think the difficulty that Giovanni van Bronckhorst has faced really since that game at Parkhead, that 4-0 Old Firm defeat, is people have struggled to see how is he going to win the league title after he's had that summer with the squad being where it is. This isn't a squad that we know it's going to be rebuilt next summer. And I think that's the main difficulty he's had, obviously, in amongst all the European defeats as well. So a lot to catch up on. Obviously, we're going to have loads and loads of coverage all week and with whatever is happening. But yeah, initial reaction is surprise at the timing. But I think the reality is Van Bronckhorst has lost the faith of most, if not all, the supporters. And when you get to that position, not only is it difficult to continue on, but it's difficult to rebuild that trust.
Yep. Stevie, you did touch on it, and I agree with you. He's a pleasure to deal with, Giovanni van Bronckhorst. I did enjoy any interaction that we did have with him. However, it's a results-driven business. Rangers in this dreadful run of form, 9 points behind Celtic. The style of play isn't pleasing on the eye. There's a feeling that results have caught up with lackluster performances. I don't think he could have too many complaints, could he? Is it maybe a surprise for you that he lasted this long in the season, perhaps?
I think that anybody that's had the run that he's had, Derek, it's very difficult to survive as Rangers manager. Champions League qualification. I remember we sat here after the Liverpool game and I said that was a moment to do it. We were 2 points behind. I said that he should go. And not only should he go, but Ross Wilson should also go because of the situation that the squad was in. I thought then was the time to do it. Conceding 7 goals at home to anyone is inexcusable. That Champions League run looked really devoid of any hope or any kind of any enthusiasm. You know, there was no belief there. There was nothing there. And then that then transpired into the league form. And as soon as that happened, you know, St Johnstone away, St Mirren away really was turgid football, really poor. There's nothing there. And I understand, look, I completely understand that he's had a really difficult hand in terms of injuries, in terms of, you know, the recruitment that's been brought in to help him. I don't think any of that has helped Giovanni van Bronckhorst in the slightest. So, you know, people might say, well, Stevie, you'll be sitting there happy. I'm never happy to be in this situation where we've lost our manager and had to make that change. Nobody wanted it to work out more than us sitting here. So, you know, it's a big moment. I'm not surprised that Rangers have left it till this point, maybe to get through it. I can only imagine that the reason why we've had this delay is they're getting everything in order, and I would expect them to move quickly. But I'll reiterate again, removing Giovanni van Bronckhorst on his own is not a solution to this. You know, this is a bigger problem than just Giovanni van Bronckhorst. Ross Wilson's position in all this is for me still as untenable as it was yesterday. Just because Giovanni van Bronckhorst is gone doesn't mean we suddenly forget about his performance as director of football. And he's the one that appointed Giovanni van Bronckhorst. He's the one that's overseeing this position with the squad. He's the one that's in charge of this overinflated wage bill, etc. And there's a lot of questions that still need to be answered on him and his position at Rangers, not just Giovanni van Bronckhorst. And I said a way back in a Rangers Review article, a way back in April, that Giovanni van Bronckhorst would carry the can for underperforming players and underperforming executives at the club. And I still feel that's exactly what's happened here. As much as his own performance has been questionable, he's not the only one that should be really in jeopardy as job-wise.
Listen, it's a point that Stevie makes. The manager does carry the responsibility more often than not, Joshua, and he is the one. You can't sack a squad of players or what have you. It's a manager who usually loses his job when results aren't going the way that the club hopes, and it looks like, well, it has that Giovanni van Bronckhorst is carrying the can for this poor run of results. Can you see?
Yeah, just to come back on it, Derek. I think the idea of, obviously, you know, Stevie, everyone has opinions about whose responsibility it is for who, and the idea of a sporting director model that Rangers have in place is that you have continuity between managers. Now, people can, of course, have their opinions about how well certain people do their job. The difficulty, not a difficulty, but I remember, you know, me and Stevie were sitting next to one another just 5-6 months ago, where we're watching Rangers penalty kicks away from Van Bronckhorst to penalty kicks away from winning a European trophy. So that's why I think this discussion has always been so difficult to determine how good a job has he done. But then the difficulty within that has been that people have watched his football week in, week out. And Johnny wrote a brilliant article about it, which we'll maybe republish on the website, and trying to understand, well, why has that been the case? Why can Van Bronckhorst take the club to that height but not get 2 points out of 9 against St Johnstone, St Mirren and Livingston? And I think it's been a bit of a failure of philosophy. I do think what Van Bronckhorst and what hasn't worked out for him has been the fact that his football has not been conducive to creating against deep defences, and that is 80-70% of what you're faced with. As a Rangers manager, cast your mind back to this time last year when he came into the job and there was the initial uplift. Remember how certain individuals seemed to be getting much better. Joe Rebo, Alfredo Morelos, Ryan Kent. But very quickly, I think this season after, combined with those European results, it became apparent that it was going to be so difficult to rebuild the trust. So while I understand the criticism of the sporting director, the role, I think the model has to be in place because I think you do have to have continuity between managers. So I just think it's important to put that back across. I think the main difficulty with Van Bronckhorst, his football this season has been a failure for his football to win games domestically. I think his best winning run in the league, I'll need to check this, but I think it was when he first came in, 6 games. And again, to go back, 2 points in 9 against St Mirren, St Johnstone and Livingston. We said it at the time loads, Derek. You just can't win the league with that. You can't really have a profitable future if you're going to drop points in those types of games. So it's so difficult, I think, to rebuild trust from that position.
Yeah, but Bronckhorst could quite rightly say, Stevie, that he guided Rangers to Seville last season. He won the Scottish Cup after such a long time, and of course the injuries have hampered his squad this season. He got the club into the Champions League, which he was asked to do, beating 2 very good sides in the process to do so. Could you see, would there be an argument for him staying on, or do you feel this is ultimately the right call? I know I heard someone actually liking it to Claudio Ranieri when he won the league with Leicester City, but he was sacked shortly into the season after. Club like Rangers just can't stand still, can they?
There's a definite... I wrote on Friday that I could understand why this board would maybe want to give him more time in terms of the Scottish Cup, in terms of European run, in terms of Champions League, and then with the injuries as well. So I can completely understand the board perhaps wanting to do that. But I also said in the article, I don't agree with that. And what we are seeing on the pitch, there's nothing to kind of grab onto. Joshua and I have sat at games, Derek. We've all sat at games and been like, I don't see this. I don't understand the philosophies of what he's trying to do. The players don't look like they've got any ideas on what to do, short of this movement. And I don't want to sound stereotypical, but it is very true that it goes side to side, back to front really quickly. And when it's not working, it recycles, and it's very difficult to watch. It's very difficult to enjoy. And the thing is, what we've got to remember is as well that this isn't the first time this squad have done this. This level of performance, this is what we're seeing. I'm loath to put it all on Van Bronckhorst. This is my point I'm trying to sit here and make this morning. And people might say that's a bit funny because you've been against his management and stuff, and that's completely true. And it's not a reversal of what I'm saying. I just think that removing him isn't suddenly going to magically get better. Whoever comes in has got a job on this squad. The squad still needs ripped up. It still needs completely rebuilt. Whoever comes in is going to have to be able to coach this team as well as manage them. And I just think it's a bit bigger than it's only Giovanni van Bronckhorst's fault. In terms of what's happened, and what we've seen on the pitch, I don't think there's any way that you can sugarcoat it and say that it's been, it's been promising or we've had bits to hold on to. Joshua's a lot more patient than I am, and we've sat at games before. Right, and even Joshua's saying to me, Steve, I just don't see this. I don't get what he's trying to do, and I'm more reactive. We know that we've sat here and watched me on these shows, and we've kind of, people have had a laugh at it and stuff. But I just, I'm pretty much, I'm still kind of in shock, Derek. To be honest, like I'm very surprised it's happened this morning. I'm very surprised that we are where we are. So. It's still taking me by surprise in terms of that, but it's where we go now and what else happens. I'm interested.
Derek, see, just to come in on what Stevie's saying there, because I have the pleasure of sitting next to Stevie at a lot of matches, and
Pleasure.
Back up
Football friends.
pleasure. Yeah, real football friends. But I think you could see what a lot of people could see what he was trying to do, but they could see it wasn't working. So when Van Bronckhorst first came in, think back to that Livingston game where Arfield and Aribo both are making those runs beyond. Think of the Hearts game away from home. And it was something different. It was new. It was direct attacks. It was taking teams by surprise, and it was effective. I think ever since then, bar a few games, Rangers have struggled to look dominating in domestic games. And one of the main issues for me has been the fact that they've tried to be too direct too often. I thought a great example was, if you'll indulge me for a second, Hearts at home, the 1-0 game last week. Hearts came and played a 4-4-2 and there was loads of space in the middle, but John Lundstram and Malik Tillman just constantly instructed to run beyond the defence because of, I think, the type of moves he wants his midfielders to make. And again, to go back to the point, I just don't think suitability-wise that allowed you to dominate opponents effectively. So the possession's a great point and something that's been raised as far back going to about this time last year, Derek, when you spoke to someone, I think from I think it was a Feyenoord supporter who talked about the style of football. And there has been times where you've thought, okay, maybe he is starting to learn here. Maybe this team is going to learn how to, under his management, dominate domestically, but that was always naturally covered by the European run, and this season that's been exposed because what was Van Bronckhorst's big strength last season, which was his ability to punch upwards, his ability to make everyone believe, his ability to harness the energy of Ibrox, as 180'd and really exposed the domestic football. And it's what Stevie says, I think, captures it brilliantly, because people want to enjoy going to watch the football. And if it's not entertaining, they want to be sure that it's definitely going to win. And what happened in the last few weeks to Van Bronckhorst, I think, is, he needed performances and results. He ended up with neither. And when you're not getting the results and the football isn't great, when people can't see what you're can't see the, realistic success of what you're trying to do long term, I think that's when you become in the situation that he did, which is, not a lot of people think that he will be a long-term successful Rangers manager.
Yeah. It's an interesting one, Stevie. I mean, when he was appointed, taking over from Steven Gerrard, there was a fanfare, I think, more so to do with the fact he had that tie-in with the club, being an ex-player, a bit of a fan's favourite when he played at Ibrox. Of course, he won the title at Feyenoord, but he replaced Steven Gerrard. Everyone was, most people were shocked and surprised to see him leave to join Aston Villa. And when Van Bronckhorst came in, I think most Rangers supporters would say they were quite happy with that appointment. And as Joshua said, I did speak to that Feyenoord supporter, and some alarm bells were possibly ringing, but you try and shut them out because it's an ex-player coming to manage your club. But those comments have rung true in the end. The whole horseshoe was mentioned when I spoke to that Feyenoord supporter, and that really was. You just hope it's not going to be the legacy of Van Bronckhorst's time at Ibrox when Rangers supporters think back and they'll think of that style of play. But in hindsight, I guess was it the right appointment at the time? He did, of course, get Rangers to Seville, that heroic run to the Europa League, as I mentioned, the Scottish Cup, and got Rangers into the Champions League. Is there a bit of hindsight? Maybe a different manager should have been appointed back then?
No, I think it was the right appointment. I think everybody, amongst the Rangers support, bar a few people that were quite sceptical about it, would have taken Giovanni van Bronckhorst. Giovanni van Bronckhorst wanted the job. He applied for the job. He made himself available. So, it's difficult because it's not worked out. That article, Derek, has become infamous because very quickly, we were talking about, is Giovanni van Bronckhorst's style going to be the right thing back in January? So, there was even when they were winning that first initial run, if you remember that game at Tynecastle where we won 2-0, we were very lucky that day in terms of the chances that they missed. And then we went on this incredible European run. It really was incredible. Giovanni van Bronckhorst at the heart of that, making tactical decisions at home to Dortmund, when we were 2-1 down at half-time, was changed everything. We should have won that game. Referee very unlucky not to get a third goal that night. And then we powered on in that European run. There was a belief, there was a desire, there was everything about it. He took Calvin Bassey from a player into a superstar. He done that. He molded him. He brought him completely on. We were an inch away from immortality. And I think if that happens, we're not having this discussion, because Giovanni van Bronckhorst's position, or we might be having it if we're in this position, but it wouldn't be as ferocious as amongst the fan base, because people would rightly say, well, Giovanni van Bronckhorst is etched in history of the club, and he would have been. That's how close he was. But the facts are that, this football club, we have to win. And I've said it, and I've said that the minute that we drop our standards, and the minute that we accept that the position we're in is, good enough for this club, is the minute that we're in trouble. And I've had a lot of people say to me, like, that you've got unrealistic standards. And, I'm the type of guy, Derek, as Josh will tell you, and you'll tell me, we win 4-0 and I'll moan about why we missed the 5th chance. But Rangers Football Club, we have to win. We're the premium club of this country. We need to get back to being that way, and this position is untenable. So it's a really difficult one. It's, you're asking, would I have changed it? No, I wouldn't have, because, a year ago, I would have taken Giovanni van Bronckhorst every single time. So I don't have issues with his appointment. I don't have issues with, making that choice. I just think that it's the right thing to do at this moment in time. Yeah. But as I said, it's bigger than just him. It's bigger than, this suddenly sorts everything. What they're going to do now, it's going to be really interesting to see what type of character that gets brought in, and who's going to be their next choice. But I can't help but feel, if they've taken this long and they've spent this amount of time kind of going over everything to make that decision, then they've got somebody waiting to come in, which makes me think that person's readily available as well.
Yeah.
So it's going to be an interesting, next 24 hours immediately after, and we'll see where we are. But Derek, look, and in relation to that question, it's a difficult one, but I wouldn't change it. Giovanni van Bronckhorst, even though it's not went well for him, brought us some amazing highs. We should be thankful for the Europa League run. We should be thankful for the Scottish Cup. That semi-final victory was incredible, just days after the Europa League as well. The way he's handled himself as Rangers manager through some incredibly difficult moments, Jimmy Bale's passing, the way he handled and led the club through that, is something that we should always be thankful for, in terms of a proper Rangers man leading us through that. So I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm glad he's gone. I'm definitely not glad he's gone. I think it's the right thing, and these are two different viewpoints. But I'm glad that Van Bronckhorst was appointed, and I wouldn't have changed it. It's just unfortunate how it's transpired.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting. We'll discuss potential replacement shortly, but Van Bronckhorst's legacy, Joshua, what do you think it will be? Will it be that horseshoe style of play? We are expecting an announcement, folks, shortly from the club. We'll bring you that as soon as it breaks. But yeah, Joshua, Van Bronckhorst's Rangers legacy, what will it be for you?
Oh, in time, I think definitely the European run. Any manager, whenever he goes, the immediate reaction, I think, when it's not been successful, will be the frustration that's been there for a number of weeks among supporters, because they have felt that, as we've come back to, this isn't going to be successful. So why is it going on? Because success doesn't seem like a realistic outcome in the end. But definitely in time, I think people will remember him for that road to Seville, which, as Stevie said, I think it perfectly suited his managerial style, because it allowed him to change things and make alterations from the sideline and adapt to the opposition. And one of his big difficulties domestically was the fact that he could not do that to the same degree of effectiveness, because when you're playing St Mirren at home or St Johnstone away or whoever it may be, I don't think that's as required. Cast your mind back to the game at home against Dundee United, an example we've used many times, the 1-0 win, when James Tavernier starts at centre-back and everyone thinks, what is going on? And he says in the post-match press conference, we prepared two systems because we didn't know how Dundee United were going to set up. Now, at the time, because Gerrard had done the same thing, that change, I think, brought a freshness. But I think looking at that in hindsight, to have such reactivity to the opposition just didn't work domestically. So Stevie's right. He ended the run for the wait for a Scottish Cup, which was easier said than done based on the last few years. Some of those nights at Ibrox, people much older than me will tell me it's the best that they've ever experienced, or right up there with the best they've ever experienced. He got them as far as he could in that final. It's not as if Rangers were beaten in 90 minutes or 120 minutes. It was only penalties. He can't really do anything about that apart from picking the takers and preparing them for that. So I think that will absolutely be his legacy. In a way, it feels like it's a shame it got to this stage because, as Stevie says, of the excitement that existed this time last year when he was set to be appointed. But again, to go back to, I think, Johnny's piece, which he's going to republish on the website, I think it's a failure of philosophy domestically, which didn't work and wasn't going to work. And that's why ultimately Van Bronckhorst, as we keep saying, in the end, it just didn't work for him.
Yeah, right. Of course, attention will turn to his potential replacement. Stevie, at this moment in time, we're waiting at a club statement, folks. We'll bring you details of that shortly. That may paint a clearer picture for us. However, replacements out there that could take charge of this Rangers team. You mentioned it needs squad upheaval. I don't think there'd be many that would disagree with that point, Stevie. Does it need an interim manager at this point in time until the end of the season, perhaps? Or would you rather see someone come in to build this side and build the side pretty much from scratch? Giovanni van Bronckhorst did say there could be up to 10 players leaving the club come the end of the season. So it is going to need some major surgery, isn't it? So who would you like to see come in?
Derek, see, when you said interim, see if you're going to suggest or anybody does a certain interim manager, then I'm out of here. But see, before we started this as well, we were coming on to talk about Kenny McLean as a potential transfer.
That's been shelved, I think, for today.
Yeah, can you not just ask me if I thought that was a good idea? Potential manager, look, I'm going to dodge this as best I can and sit on the fence completely. So I'm just going to say that whoever comes in needs to be a strong figurehead. It needs to have the stature and the ability to properly lead the club, not only as a manager but also as a coach. Somebody that can set up and be disciplined and well organised, and somebody that can properly get the best out of this squad. But not only get the best out of it, he's then got to rebuild it and try and get, he's got to have a knowledge of potential players that can come in as well. So
I'll stop you there, Stevie, because Rangers have just released a statement, folks. Sorry, Steve, I'll just read you this and then we'll carry on. Club statement: Rangers Football Club confirms today its parted company with manager Giovanni van Bronckhorst. The board would like to put on record sincere thanks to Gio for all his efforts since his appointment as manager. Arriving at the club just over a year ago, Gio led the club to a 5th European final and won the Scottish Cup last May. He also led the team to the club's first Champions League qualification in 12 years. Unfortunately, results and performances over recent months haven't met expectations, and the decision was made today by the board to terminate the contract of the manager. The search for the new manager is now underway. Chairman Douglas Park commented, "I want to thank Gio for the hard work he has put in over the last 12 months, and especially the achievements of taking the club to the Europa League final and winning the Scottish Cup last season. Unfortunately, recent results have not met neither nor Gio's expectations, and we have taken this difficult decision today. Everyone at Rangers wishes Gio success, every success in the future." Your reaction then to that, Stevie?
Yeah, I mean, well, it confirms what we thought. Listen, you know what? I'm disappointed. Like, you know what? I'm shocked because of the way it's happened, but I am disappointed, Derek, because it means that we've not done well enough and that we are in this position. So I don't take any satisfaction in it. I don't sit here and say anything other. I'm really disappointed. Van Bronckhorst is a very nice guy. Yeah. He was very, very good to deal with. Never dodged any of the so-called tough questions we put to him. He's been very dignified and I do feel bad in terms of that, but ultimately this is the right move for the club. And given it just kind of echoes, I don't want to sit and repeat what I've said. It kind of, I do think that because of the length of time we've taken a week now to make this decision. I think that they'll be fast to make an appointment. It kind of points in a certain direction towards, who I think will possibly come in. So it's a big one. It's confirmed now, and then there's plenty to discuss. And yeah, I mean, look, I'm sorry, I'm kind of starting in a wee bit here, Derek. Because
your points are spot on, Stevie. Joshua, it has now been confirmed. Stevie said he's saddened because it means that Rangers, of course, are not performing, and it means a dismissal of someone that was a really good ambassador for the club. But as Douglas Park said in that final line, recent results have not met neither our nor Gio's expectations. That's the bottom line at the end of the day, isn't it? The results have been dreadful. And that's why he's lost his job today. Just touching on the question I posed to Stevie before I butted in there. What kind of replacement would you like to see coming into the club? Would you like to see them go foreign again, perhaps, the ex-player route, or it has to be the best man for the job, really, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, as Stevie says, it's a lot's happening, isn't it?
Certainly is.
Which route should they go down? I think Rangers need to have a manager that has a really progressive style of play that can produce attacking football, because to go back to why it's not worked for Van Bronckhorst, that's such a large part of the job remit. The noises coming out about Van Bronckhorst getting sacked, obviously after the St Johnstone game, there was no kind of crisis talks. But I think after St Mirren, it just became so apparent that it almost became apathetic, Derek. And what I mean by that is there was so much, I think, frustration at the position that Rangers were in. But because the manager did not seem to be under huge pressure, because of the way he was talking, it didn't look like there was a realistic avenue out of that. But I think the statement there probably sums up the reality of the situation. The performance of the manager this season was not good enough. How many Rangers managers would survive those defeats in the Champions League? And yes, you can discuss the level of opposition that Rangers went up against, but as we've sat here and discussed many times, that has been the same under Van Bronckhorst beforehand. So he couldn't, play to the gallery and say he can't compete with teams as a sort of excuse for the performances one season when they did it the season before, and then again those 2 points in 9 games. The most difficult situation for him was that he couldn't point to anything to say that this wasn't going to happen again. I remember right after the St Johnstone game that there was nothing to hold on to. There wasn't players that have improved. The performances, it wasn't as if Rangers were massively underperforming their expected goals, or they'd been really unlucky, or they'd played attacking football and just been caught in the break. They just weren't good enough domestically. So that is I think it was the only option that could happen, because it was going to be so hard to build the supporters' trust again. In terms of who to go for, I mean, there's loads and loads of names in there, lots of exciting names, some that excite me more than others, which obviously we'll have full kind of coverage of looking at over the next few days. But Rangers need someone, I think, progressive attacking football, because of the what they're going to come up against week in, week out domestically. Something that can excite the fans playing style wise, and obviously win week in, week out. So it's a tough gig, but there will be people out there, and the board absolutely need to get this decision right based on the last 12 months domestically.
Yeah, lots of suggestions coming in the comments here, folks. I'll get to a few of them. Mad Dog says, my money is on Neil McCann and Kevin Thompson till the end of the season. Shooty Turtle gets in touch. Go get Stevie. Go get Michael Beelin right now, he says. Of course, knocked back an approach from Wolves earlier on in the season to stay at QPR. Of course, he has that tie, and he has been a coach at Ibrox before, and was at Ibrox recently as well. Remember when he was back up the road, did meet Stevie and a number of other Rangers Rangers supporters. I think he was in the Loudon, wasn't he, in the district bar and all that, mixing with the fans. So he certainly hasn't lost his love for the club. Susie Sheep says Marcelo Bielsa, no other option. Well, the football will certainly be entertaining. I think would you be opposed to that, Joshua? That would certainly keep you on your toes if Marcelo was to come up here.
I would love Marcelo to come up here, but I don't think he will. So let's not get me too excited. But that would be fun. That would be attacking football. There'd be nothing held back.
Jimmy Calderwood style 10 up front sort of stuff. But it would be
a bit more football pedigree than Jimmy Calderwood. But I like the analogy, Derek.
Yeah, good Rangers man as well, Jimmy, and I hope he's well. I know he's been struggling lately, but John Campbell says, get Kevin Muscat in. Of course, he's doing well himself as a manager. As a player, he wasn't really highly rated at Ibrox when he came, was he? When he played for a season under Alex McLeish. Get Knutson in, the Bodo Glimt manager. That's a name that I've heard mentioned from several quarters. I would pose question as to why he hasn't moved yet. He has been highly rated for some time. He's got his team playing some really fantastic stuff, but that's a name that Gareth Jones suggests. And what about this one? Gattuso as manager, he would sort Morelos out. What would you say to that, Stevie?
No. So, listen, I like Rino Gattuso, but is he not? I thought he was not at Valencia?
Somewhere.
Yeah, I think Valencia the last time. Yeah.
And he was, he has been interested previously, but I don't think that, Gennaro Gattuso is a realistic. I'm trying to think of who would be nicest to me in the press conference. Marcelo Bielsa probably speaks better English, but I don't see that as being realistic. Look, I genuinely think we're going to be in the realms of Sean Dyche will definitely be mentioned because of his links and his friendship with Ross Wilson.
Yeah.
Then you're looking at most likely being, in terms of Michael Beale, I think that Mick's an obvious candidate. And then you're looking at possibly Kevin Muscat as well. I think that's kind of where we are. Kevin Muscat, a week ago, I would have said to you, absolutely not. But I've kind of looked into it a wee bit more, and he's obviously done good things. It would be a risk. People talk about, kind of like the Bodo Glimt manager, Knutson and stuff like that. I would be a bit unsure on that in terms of his style. I know that he's not doing well this season. A few players have moved on and then come back. They don't really seem to settle away. I would be kind of worried about a kind of Ronnie Dyler remake for us that would worry me. So I wouldn't be a huge fan of that, but it's going to be interesting in terms of where we go. I don't think any of them are terrible suggestions, but I don't think some of them are realistic. Rino Gattuso, I don't think we've got a chance. Although he would be, imagine some of the questions. Rino, do you think the players are playing for you? I think I got a water bottle thrown at me. So no, I'm not too sure that would be viable or not. But it's certainly, it'll certainly give us something to talk about. I do think, and I repeat this again, I do think that they'll have and they'll know and they'll be given word. I don't think this board makes the same mistake as before where there's nobody lined up. So I think this will happen quite quickly. And I think it kind of points to probably somebody that we've already mentioned and know. Yeah. I don't see it being a wide left kind of appointment in terms of here comes possibly like Bodo Glimt manager out of that area. So it's interesting. It's interesting, definitely. And Duncan Ferguson for me wouldn't be one either. So he would definitely.
I don't think he would come up either. I don't necessarily think he would come up, but who knows?
He's got the experience for it either. Like in terms of, it's very much back to where we were with Gerrard. So
yeah,
I wouldn't be prepared. And before anyone suggests it, Steven Gerrard, absolutely not. So he's had his time. I don't think he would come back up here anyway. But that was a definite no for me.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. Joshua, what would you go along with those lines? I was going to ask you about Gerrard. I think that ship has sailed. Also, the fact that he doesn't have Michael Beale and his coaching staff. I think it was the whole package when Gerrard was up at Rangers that worked. I don't think Gerrard on his own is something that Rangers should be pursuing. Other names, Ralph Hasenhüttl is another one, of course, recently lost his job at Southampton, has a relationship with Ross Wilson. It wouldn't be a surprise to see if he was one of the names that were being discussed for to replace Van Bronckhorst. I see a lot of comments saying David Martindale as well. Now, I'm a big fan of David Martindale. I think he's done an absolutely sensational job at Livingston with the resources he has. However, managing Livingston and then managing Rangers is just it's a completely different ballgame. I think it's too much of a jump for that to happen. Where do you stand on those sort of names?
Yeah, well, we should actually just say as well, Derek, seeing as we're 40 minutes in and we've got so many people on, that you can actually subscribe for £1 at the moment and get all, because we're going to have all this kind of, we're going to look at all these managers and we're going to have all of our opinions, all coverage. There's too much coverage going on in my head to think what we're going to do, but you can subscribe. Link in the
Black
description.
Friday offer. It's a Black Friday offer, isn't it? A pound for 6 months. What unbelievable! Practically giving it away.
Giving it away, yeah. So if you want to subscribe in the comments or in the description, click subscribe, just £1 for 6 months. And yeah, we're going to have loads of content coming your way, a long read on what went wrong with some of the information, some details throughout Van Bronckhorst's year-long tenure, why it didn't work, obviously all of our opinions on it, who's going to be the next manager and why, looking at some possibilities and some possible managers and what strengths they may bring. I totally forgot what question you asked me, Derek. Was it?
Yeah, I mentioned some managers' names, but I like this comment from John Dooley, Joshua. He says, Joshua Barry, he wants you to take over. He's very tactically astute. He could be our Jose Mourinho.
Don't think I could handle the pressure, John, but thanks so much. You as my assistant, Derek. We get a nice blend.
Being quizzed by Stevie, no thanks.
No, I know, absolutely. You have to imagine that the boards, the reason it has taken a week, as Stevie said at the top of the show, is because either they're quite far along with a potential candidate or they have a couple in mind. You'd imagine that they definitely speak to more than one person. I don't think this will have been done. This decision will not have been made without a lot of work having gone in the last week to speak to potential candidates or outline who may be available, who may be ready to come in. Hasenhüttl, the difficulty with people like Hasenhüttl and Dyche obviously is the money that they were on in the Premier League. I don't know off the top of my head, Hasenhüttl, obviously a pressing coach. I think you need a coach first and foremost who's going to be able to bring in who's going to be able to use the 70% of possession that Rangers get well. And I think with Van Bronckhorst, we can say in hindsight that domestically, I don't think he did that over time, especially after his pre-season, which allowed him to bed in those ideas. So when you're thinking about names like Dyche and Hasenhüttl, Dyche is someone who I think in the last 3 months, as he's kind of started to do media rounds, has been on a bit of a mission to not reinvent himself, but do a bit of a PR campaign, which is understandable. Yeah. And I do think with Dyche, a lot of the things he says and the ways he gets kind of pigeonholed is unfair. I don't think he's the most progressive football coach in the world, but I also think it's not as if he's... Yeah, exactly. If you look at the resources he worked with, it's not as if he's... it's not as if he did a bad job, quite the opposite. He wouldn't be my first choice. Beale has the obvious attraction of knowing what it's like up here, knowing how to coach progressive football. The argument against that would be, is it a backward step? Again, McBeal in the last few months has done a lot of interviews speaking about the end of his tenure at Rangers, and just in the Curry Club one I was listening to last week, he obviously made those comments saying Celtic definitely wouldn't have come past Rangers, and depending on your viewpoint, either Rangers were coming out of a difficult period after the COVID and the Champions League exit, or they just hadn't refreshed enough. And I guess we never know. Obviously, Beale's going to say one thing because he was on that side of it. Muscat have not looked at much, so this will, I think, be the next few days' task there to look through this. So yeah, just again urge everyone to subscribe. Just £1 at the moment. Hopefully you like it, and obviously supports our morning briefing work as well.
Yeah, whoever comes in, Stevie, I mean, that's what everyone. The mood music was. This was the right time to make a judgment call on the manager, get someone else in. He does have a number of weeks before the club return to competitive action when Hibs come to Ibrox on the 15th of December. I think you want a manager, like you say. I think it has taken a week for the sort of a severance package, you'd imagine, to be ironed out. You'd hope that they have candidates in mind and discussions are taking place as we speak. I think it's key to get someone in pretty sharpish, do you?
Yeah, they've given themselves, the players don't return until next week, so they've given themselves a wee bit of time in terms of, they have a few working days. And it goes, look, I mean, I just don't think that they would do it and then suddenly be sitting there going, right, who are we going to get? I think this is all
Wolves
planned. Yeah, I mean, I think they're going to know where they're going. I think they're going to have been given the heads up by potential targets to say, yes, this is a possibility. So I think it'll happen quite quickly. I think we'll see a new manager in by, the end of the week, certainly by the weekend. So that would be what I would predict given how long it's taken. So I just think that, I don't have any insight into this and to, like, who could come in or, of what the board's thinking is. So I can't say, I don't want to give the impression that I'm sitting here with any knowledge. I don't have any knowledge of the situation. This is as much brand new information to me as it is to everybody else watching. So people coming in or what they're doing, I just get the impression and most likely the hope that they know what they're doing and who's coming in is going to have been lined up. I think that points to somebody who's possibly out of job. And that then, it would make the likes of Dyche, etc., favourites for me. Joshua made a point about money and what they were on. Steven Gerrard was on, a fair whack when he was at Liverpool, and that didn't bother him coming up here. So we might not be able to offer, hundreds of thousands a week like these guys. I think somebody said to me Sean Dyche was on 6 to 8 million a year at Burnley. We're certainly not going to offer him that. He might not even get that for a transfer fee. So it would be, for Sean Dyche, it would be the chance to get up here and turn the club around and get them back on an even keel, get them back to challenging properly and becoming a normality in terms of titles and things like that. That's what Giovanni van Bronckhorst said. He had to make it a habit that this club are winning and challenging. That's what the new manager's remit is. He has to make Rangers, he has to make us that. He has to turn us into, the club that we want to be and that we believe we are. At the moment, we're not close to it. So it's an interesting one. It's certainly going to be an interesting couple of days. Look, I have my favourites for the job. That's understandable. I'm sure everybody does, but it's certainly going to be interesting. Derek, listen, you've been asking us all the questions this morning, Derek. So how about we put it back on you? Josh, on the table a wee bit. Who would you like to see come in, and how are you responding to this news this morning?
Well, I'm like you, Stevie. I'm a bit taken aback when we got wind of it early this morning. It took me by surprise. It sort of steamrolled from there. A bit of a shocker. Although understandable, I could see it happening at some point. If it was either today or weeks down the line, I think it would ultimately end in the same way, which is disappointing because I do have a lot of time for Giovanni van Bronckhorst. James Dalrymple says he put a super comment in. Thanks, James, for the support. Really appreciate that, buddy. He would like Knutson, the Bodo Glimt manager. And it's certainly a name that's been bandied around a lot. I'm like you, Steve. I don't think that would be the right appointment for me. I go along with Stephen Payton, and he says, bring in Arteta. I think that is achieved. I think that.
Well, Derek, on that,
bring him home.
David Edgar had a hilarious moment at our live show where, what was it, Stevie? Someone had emailed him saying, David, would you take Arteta? Bearing in mind, Arteta is top of the biggest league in the world with Arsenal. And I think David said...
But not Rangers, though, Joshua.
Yeah, true. But he said, take him for what? Curry. But I think it just shows you, obviously, the allure of Rangers. I was just going to highlight William Matheson's comment here, Derek, saying, how do I subscribe for £1? The link is in the description, William. So if you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, if you just go to the top, just below the video, you can access the link there. I'll also put it in the comments as well. So yeah, as I say, £1 for 6 months, all the content you could want at this time with a new manager. We'll have Stevie's opinion as ever, as well as our own, and all the kind of content I've already outlined. So that's how you can access that, William.
Yeah, absolutely. John Dooley says, do you rate Domenico Tedesco? Of course, we remember him from managing RB Leipzig. He's looking for a job as well, I believe, dismissed from the Bundesliga side a good few weeks ago now. He's another name. Listen, there's going to be a whole host of names being linked with the job. It's a prestigious job. As Stevie said, I don't think money is an issue for managers that are out of work at the moment. Rangers is a massive institution, and managing a club like Rangers is certainly going to be attractive to a whole host of managers out there. So, yeah, watch this space. We will have all the latest, folks, from Ibrox. If anything materialises or happens with regards to a new managerial appointment, you'll hear it here first. Yeah, just a reminder, the breaking news this morning is that Giovanni van Bronckhorst is no longer the Rangers manager. He's been sacked just after a year in charge of the Ibrox club. And as Joshua quite rightly mentioned as well, we've got the Black Friday offer on just now. Now's the time to take advantage of it. Just £1 for 6 months worth of content. Head over to rangersreview.co.uk/subscribe for all the details. Thanks as ever to Joshua and Stevie. There'll be lots of content on the website coming from the both of them today, tomorrow, and all throughout the week. So even though there's no Rangers in action, there's plenty of Rangers news to discuss, especially after today. Okay, folks, go and enjoy the rest of your Monday. We'll be back again tomorrow if nothing happens before then. So, yeah, we'll speak to you a little later on. Bye for now.